May 13, 1943, temporary holding facility near Tunis, Algeria. Obergefreiter Hans Müller of the 21st Panzer Division sat cross-legged in the dust, sharing his final cigarette with 3 fellow prisoners as they awaited transport to American prison camps. The veteran of the Afrika Korps campaigns laughed bitterly as he read captured American newspapers distributed by their captors. "Look at this propaganda," Müller said, pointing to a Coca-Cola advertisement featuring smiling Americans enjoying fizzy drinks. "The decadent Americans waste resources on luxury beverages while we fight for the fatherland with iron discipline. They are soft, spoiled by their materialistic society. This war will teach them the meaning of sacrifice." Around him, 30,000 German and Italian prisoners waited for Liberty ships that would carry them across the Atlantic to prison camps in the American heartland. What none of these battle-hardened veterans could have imagined was that within weeks they would be consuming more Coca-Cola, ice cream and chocolate than most had seen in their entire lives, luxuries that would systematically dismantle every assumption about American weakness and German superiority. The mathematical reality of American abundance was already being calculated in production statistics that defied German comprehension. The Coca-Cola company alone was producing 95 million servings daily. By 1943, enough to provide every American soldier and war worker with multiple bottles per day while maintaining civilian consumption. More staggering still, American ice cream production exceeded 600 million gallons annually, more frozen dessert than Germany had produced in total during the previous decade. What Müller couldn't know, what none of the German officers briefing their men on American softness understood, was that their captors were about to demonstrate abundance so overwhelming that it would force a complete reassessment of everything they believed about their enemies, their homeland, and their cause. The German contempt for American materialism wasn't merely propaganda. It was rooted in 40 years of European intellectual tradition that viewed American capitalism as inherently weak and corrupting. Nazi ideology had built upon this foundation, teaching soldiers that American society was decadent, racially mixed, and incapable of the discipline necessary for sustained warfare. Hauptmann Friedrich Radke, holder of the Iron Cross First Class and veteran of campaigns in France and North Africa, exemplified this confidence in his diary, entries recovered decades later. "The Americans fight with machines because they lack the warrior spirit essential for victory. Their soldiers depend on material comfort and mechanical advantages rather than superior training and ideological commitment. When separated from their industrial support systems, they will prove inferior to German fighting men." The intelligence briefings provided to German forces had consistently reinforced these beliefs through selective reporting that emphasized American industrial capacity, while dismissing its military applications. German officers were taught that American production focused on consumer goods rather than war material, evidence of a society, too, comfortable to make the sacrifices necessary for total war. Oberst Wilhelm von Thoma, commanding the 90th Light Division before his capture at El Alamein, had shared these assessments with his staff officers. American society produces automobiles, radios, and refrigerators for civilian comfort, while our factories forge weapons for victory. Their material abundance reflects weak priorities that will collapse under the pressure of sustained combat. The cultural preparation for encountering American decadence was systematic and thorough. German soldiers were warned that American captors would attempt to corrupt them through offerings of luxury goods designed to weaken their resolve and commitment to National Socialist ideals. The propaganda depicted American abundance as evidence of moral weakness rather than industrial strength. Dr. Hans Dietrich, Nazi Party ideological instructor for the Afrika Korps, had lectured German troops on American materialism just weeks before their surrender. "The enemy possesses material goods, but lacks spiritual strength. They offer chocolate and cigarettes because they cannot understand the warrior's dedication to higher purposes. Accept nothing from these merchants. Their gifts are weapons designed to destroy your National Socialist consciousness." The statistics supporting German confidence seemed overwhelming. Germany had mobilized 18 million soldiers while maintaining industrial production that armed resistance movements across occupied Europe. The Wehrmacht had conquered territories stretching from Norway to North Africa, demonstrating military capabilities that American forces had yet to match in sustained combat. More importantly, German soldiers had experienced privation that they believed made them superior to pampered Americans. The Afrika Korps had fought for months with limited water, inadequate food supplies, and minimal medical support while achieving tactical victories against numerically superior enemies. This hardship was viewed as character building that American soldiers, raised in comfort, could never match. Unteroffizier Klaus Brettschneider, captured at Kasserine Pass, expressed typical German sentiment in letters to his family. "We have learned to fight with empty stomachs and parched throats, while the Americans require hot meals and cold beverages to maintain morale. Our suffering has made us stronger. Their comfort has made them weak. Victory belongs to those who can endure the most." The ideological framework supporting these beliefs went beyond military doctrine to encompass fundamental assumptions about racial and cultural superiority. Nazi propaganda had taught German soldiers that American society, corrupted by racial mixing and Jewish influence, was inherently incapable of the unity and discipline necessary for victory against Aryan warriors. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels had reinforced these themes in broadcasts monitored by German troops. The mongrel American army, led by Jewish capitalism and Negro soldiers, lacks the racial unity essential for sustained warfare. Their material advantages cannot compensate for spiritual weakness and racial inferiority. The pure German soldier, fighting for blood and soil, will triumph over decadent materialism. The intelligence reports available to German forces seem to confirm these assessments. American civilian rationing appeared minimal compared to German wartime restrictions, suggesting a society unwilling to make necessary sacrifices. The continued production of consumer goods like automobiles and appliances indicated priorities that German officers viewed as fundamentally unserious about warfare. General Major Georg Stumme, who commanded German forces in North Africa before his death at El Alamein, had analyzed American industrial reports with professional skepticism. "The Americans continue manufacturing luxury goods while we convert every factory to war production. They possess greater raw material resources, but lack the total commitment necessary to utilize them effectively. Their half-hearted mobilization will prove inadequate against our complete dedication." The transportation to American prison camps would itself become the first shock to German preconceptions. The Liberty ships carrying prisoners across the Atlantic were products of American mass production that German naval intelligence had dismissed as impossible propaganda. Each vessel, completed in an average of 42 days, represented industrial capabilities that European shipyards couldn't match even under peacetime conditions. Fregattenkapitän Wolfgang Lüth, the U-boat commander who had observed American shipping before his own capture, provided technical assessments that his superiors refused to believe. "American shipyards are producing cargo vessels faster than we can sink them. The quality appears adequate despite impossible construction schedules. If these reports prove accurate, their industrial capacity exceeds our intelligence estimates by several orders of magnitude." The food provided during the Atlantic crossing would offer the first glimpse of American abundance. That contradicted every assumption about wartime sacrifice. German prisoners, accustomed to military rations that had deteriorated throughout the North African campaign, discovered that American military food exceeded German peacetime standards. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, the same soldier who had mocked American materialism in the Tunisian dust, would record his initial confusion in diary entries written aboard the Liberty ship. "The American guards eat better food than German officers receive in Berlin. They discard half-finished meals without thought, while we learn to cherish every crumb. Either this is elaborate propaganda or American abundance exceeds our comprehension." But this was merely the opening act in a psychological transformation that would challenge every belief these prisoners held about their enemies and themselves. The American prison camps awaiting them contained luxuries that would force fundamental reassessments of everything they thought they knew about the war, their homeland, and the society they had been taught to despise. The stage was set for the most profound ideological conversion in modern military history, not through coercion or propaganda, but through the simple, overwhelming demonstration of a civilization that could afford to treat its enemies better than they had treated themselves. The German confidence in their moral and material superiority wasn't born from propaganda alone. It was earned through 5 years of conquest that had reshaped the European continent through systematic application of discipline, sacrifice, and ideological commitment that had proven superior to every enemy they encountered. From the Polish plains to the gates of Moscow, the Wehrmacht had demonstrated that superior will could triumph over material advantage. The statistical reality supported German confidence with mathematical precision. Since September 1939, German forces had conquered territories containing 180 million people while fighting enemies possessing overwhelming numerical and industrial advantages. Poland fell in 28 days, France in 42 days, Yugoslavia in 11 days. Victories achieved through disciplined soldiers who required minimal supplies while maintaining maximum combat effectiveness. The secret lay not in material abundance, but in systematic cultivation of warrior virtue. That American society, corrupted by comfort and consumerism, could never match. German military training emphasized hardship as character building, teaching soldiers to fight effectively with minimal resources while maintaining unwavering commitment to victory. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 21st Panzer Division's reconnaissance battalion, exemplified this philosophy in his training manual distributed throughout the Afrika Korps. The German soldier fights best when deprived of comfort and luxury. Hardship purifies the warrior spirit, while abundance corrupts fighting ability. American soldiers, raised in material comfort, will collapse when faced with the privations that make our forces stronger. The dietary restrictions that had shaped German military culture since 1939 were viewed as advantages rather than limitations. Wehrmacht rations, providing 1,100 calories daily compared to American military rations of 3,200 calories, taught soldiers to function effectively with minimal nutrition while maintaining high combat performance. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, commanding Army Group Africa, had documented the tactical advantages of German frugality in his tactical assessments. Our forces operate effectively with supply lines that would paralyze American units. German soldiers advance 50 kilometers daily on rations that American troops would consider starvation. This discipline provides operational flexibility that material-dependent enemies cannot match. The ideological framework supporting these practices went beyond mere military doctrine to encompass fundamental beliefs about human nature and racial superiority. Nazi philosophy taught that struggle and sacrifice elevated the Germanic race above inferior peoples who sought comfort and ease rather than glory and conquest. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, had articulated these principles in speeches broadcast to German forces. The Aryan warrior achieves greatness through hardship and sacrifice. Comfort weakens the racial spirit, while struggle strengthens it. American materialism represents the decadence that destroys fighting races. Our privations make us invincible. The cultural preparation extended beyond military service to encompass entire German society, organized around principles of sacrifice for higher purposes. Civilian rationing, begun in 1939, was presented not as economic necessity, but as moral training that strengthened the German people while weakening their comfort-seeking enemies. Dr. Robert Ley, leader of the German Labor Front, had explained this philosophy to industrial workers. We accept rationing gladly, because sacrifice for the fatherland ennobles the German spirit. Americans hoard food and gasoline for selfish comfort, while we dedicate everything to victory. Their materialism will prove their weakness when tested by our disciplined unity. The combat record seemed to validate these beliefs with overwhelming evidence. In North Africa, German forces had consistently achieved tactical victories despite being outnumbered and outgunned by British Empire and American forces possessing superior equipment and supply systems. The Afrika Korps fought effectively on captured supplies while maintaining offensive operations that their better-supplied enemies couldn't sustain. General Major Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma, commanding the Afrika Korps before his capture, had documented German tactical superiority in his final reports. Our forces achieved victory through superior training and discipline rather than material advantage. American units require extensive supply support, while German soldiers improvise victory from captured resources. Warrior spirit defeats mechanical superiority, the individual. Examples of German endurance had become legendary throughout the Wehrmacht. Soldiers who fought for weeks without adequate food or water while maintaining combat effectiveness were celebrated as examples of Aryan superiority over materially dependent, inferior races. Hauptmann Heinz Werner Schmidt, adjutant to General Rommel, recorded examples that became inspirational propaganda. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann fought for 12 days with no food except captured biscuits and water from muddy shell holes, yet maintained his machine gun position and achieved 8 confirmed kills. Such dedication is impossible for comfort-dependent American soldiers. The technological achievements that supported German military success seem to confirm the superiority of disciplined engineering over abundant resources. German weapons like the Tiger tank, Me-262 jet fighter, and V-2 rocket represented technological advances that American mass production couldn't match despite unlimited raw materials. Professor Werner von Braun, director of rocket development at Peenemünde, had explained German technological philosophy to visiting military officials. "We achieve breakthrough innovations through concentrated effort and intellectual discipline. American research disperses resources across multiple projects while we focus superior minds on revolutionary solutions. Quality of thought defeats quantity of materials." The industrial organization supporting German military effectiveness operated on principles that American capitalism couldn't understand or replicate. The coordination between military requirements and civilian production, achieved through National Socialist planning, demonstrated systematic superiority over chaotic market mechanisms. Albert Speer, Reich Minister of Armaments and War Production, had documented German industrial advantages in production reports. "Our planned economy eliminates the waste inherent in capitalist competition. Every factory operates for victory rather than profit. Every worker contributes to racial destiny rather than personal comfort. This unity provides efficiency that American individualism cannot achieve." The social organization of German military units reflected ideological principles that created bonds stronger than the mechanical discipline imposed by material rewards. The Wehrmacht's esprit de corps was built on shared sacrifice and common purpose, rather than the monetary incentives that motivated American forces. SS Oberführer Felix Steiner, commander of the Viking Division, had articulated this philosophy in leadership training. German units fight as racial comrades united by blood and ideology. American units fight as individuals motivated by pay and comfort. When hardship tests both systems, ideological bonds prove stronger than material incentives. The economic data available to German leadership seemed to support beliefs about American material dependence creating military weakness. Intelligence reports indicated that American war production focused heavily on consumer goods rather than essential military equipment, suggesting a society unwilling to make necessary sacrifices. Reichsbank President Hjalmar Schacht had analyzed American economic statistics with professional skepticism. The IG, Americans continue producing automobiles, radios, and household appliances, while we convert every facility to weapons production. Their economy serves individual comfort rather than collective victory. This fundamental weakness will manifest under wartime pressure. The prisoner treatment protocols established by German military authorities reflected confidence that superior ideology would protect their soldiers from enemy corruption attempts. German POWs were instructed to maintain discipline and refuse American luxuries that might weaken their National Socialist commitment. The Wehrmacht High Command had issued specific instructions regarding American captivity. Enemy forces will attempt ideological corruption through offers of material comfort. Reject all unnecessary provisions beyond those required by international law. Accept minimal nutrition and basic shelter while maintaining spiritual purity and commitment to German victory. The cultural superiority that German soldiers felt toward their American captors was rooted in 40 years of European intellectual tradition that viewed American society as inherently shallow and materialistic. German universities had taught that American civilization lacked the depth and spiritual strength necessary for sustained greatness. Professor Carl Schmitt, leading German political theorist, had provided the intellectual framework that military officers absorbed through their education. American democracy represents the triumph of quantity over quality, material interest over spiritual purpose. Their society cannot produce the disciplined elite necessary for historical greatness. German aristocratic principles will defeat American democratic mediocrity. By May 1943, as German prisoners awaited transport to American camps, they carried with them 5 years of evidence that discipline, sacrifice, and ideological commitment had proven superior to material abundance and technological advantage. The Wehrmacht had conquered most of Europe while fighting enemies who possessed greater resources but lacked the spiritual strength necessary for victory. What they couldn't anticipate was that American abundance would prove so overwhelming that it would force complete reassessment of everything they believed about the relationship between material prosperity and military effectiveness. The transformation would begin not with propaganda or coercion, but with simple luxuries that demonstrated the impossibility of their assumptions about American weakness. August 2, 1943. Camp Alva, Oklahoma. Obergefreiter Hans Möller stepped off the transport truck into the blazing prairie heat, his Afrika Korps uniform still bearing the dust of Tunisia. Around him, 1,200 German prisoners gazed in bewilderment at wooden barracks that seemed more like vacation cottages than prison facilities. But it was the sight of American guards casually drinking ice-cold bottles of Coca-Cola in the afternoon heat that stopped Möller dead in his tracks. Unmöglich, he whispered to his fellow prisoner, Unteroffizier Klaus Brettschneider. They waste ice on beverages during wartime. No army could sustain such luxury while fighting a global war. What Möller couldn't comprehend was that he was witnessing the opening demonstration of American abundance that would systematically destroy every assumption he held about his captors. The Coca-Cola Company was producing 5.5 billion servings annually by 1943, enough to provide every person in America with a bottle every other day while maintaining unlimited supplies for military bases, defense plants, and prisoner-of-war camps across the globe. The first shock came during the medical processing. Dr. James Mitchell, the camp physician, offered each prisoner a small paper cup filled with vanilla ice cream, the first frozen dessert most had tasted since before the war. Müller stared at the creamy white substance, calculating that this single serving contained more dairy fat than his family in Hamburg had received in monthly rations for 2 years. "Is this some form of medical treatment?" Müller asked the German-speaking medical orderly, a second-generation immigrant from Milwaukee. "No," the orderly replied with amusement. "It's dessert. We serve it 3 times a week with dinner, sometimes chocolate, sometimes strawberry." The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Intelligence Sergeant Robert Goldman, fluent in German and responsible for monitoring prisoner conversations, documented their reactions in classified reports that captured the systematic demolition of Nazi propaganda. Prisoners consistently expressed disbelief at food, quality and quantity. Multiple subjects have asked if ice cream and Coca-Cola represent special provisions for propaganda purposes. When informed these are normal base supplies, visible confusion and ideological conflict emerge. The barracks themselves contradicted every expectation of prison camp conditions. Each wooden building housed 40 men in individual bunks with mattresses, pillows, and clean blankets, accommodations superior to what most German soldiers had experienced during active service. More shocking still were the flush toilets, hot showers, and electric lighting that operated throughout the night. Hauptmann Friedrich Rathke, the Iron Cross recipient who had dismissed American softness just months earlier, recorded his confusion in diary entries that would later provide historians with detailed accounts of psychological transformation. The American prison facilities exceed German military standards. Hot water flows continuously, electric lights burn without restriction, and guards waste fuel heating buildings to comfortable temperatures. Either this represents elaborate propaganda, or American resources exceed our intelligence estimates. But the real transformation began in the mess hall. The first dinner served to arriving prisoners included beef pot roast, mashed potatoes with butter, green beans, white bread, coffee, and impossibly, ice cream for dessert. The total caloric content exceeded 3,500 calories, more nutrition than most German civilians received in 3 days. Müller, sitting at a picnic-style table with 7 other prisoners, calculated the food waste with growing amazement. American guards discarded half-finished plates without concern, while prisoners who had survived on 200-calorie rations for months watched protein-rich meat disappear into garbage containers. They throw away more food than we received as Mao combat rations, Müller wrote in a letter to his wife that passed American censors. The guards eat meat daily and discard bread because they prefer fresh loaves. This abundance cannot be propaganda. The waste is too systematic and unconscious. The beverage service provided the most dramatic challenge to German preconceptions. The camp canteen sold ice-cold Coca-Cola for 5 cents per bottle to prisoners who possessed American script earned through work details. The idea that enemy prisoners could purchase luxury beverages with pocket money seemed to violate every principle of wartime economics. Private Raymond Torres, managing the canteen, observed German reactions with anthropological fascination. They examined Coca-Cola bottles like scientific specimens, reading the labels and asking detailed questions about production and distribution. Many refused to believe we manufacture enough soft drinks to supply civilian and military consumption simultaneously. The work details assigned to able-bodied prisoners provided additional shocks to their understanding of American abundance. Those assigned to kitchen duty discovered walk-in refrigerators stocked with fresh meat, dairy products and vegetables in quantities that German military quartermasters couldn't obtain for entire divisions. Unteroffizier Werner Hoffmann, assigned to food preparation, documented his discoveries in letters home. The American prison kitchen contains more fresh food than Hamburg's largest restaurants possessed before the war. Refrigeration units operate continuously, preserving tons of perishables that would feed a German battalion for weeks. The waste horrifies me. They discard vegetables with minor blemishes that German housewives would treasure. The psychological warfare value of this abundance became apparent through conversations monitored by American intelligence officers. Prisoners began questioning fundamental assumptions about the war's progress and their homeland's capabilities compared to American resources. Dr. Paul Hoffman, a psychiatrist attached to the camp's medical staff, documented the systematic ideological erosion in psychological assessments. Subjects demonstrate increasing cognitive dissonance when confronting American material abundance. Previous beliefs about enemy weakness and homeland superiority are challenged by direct observation of overwhelming resource availability. The contradiction creates measurable psychological stress. The most devastating revelations came through comparison with their own military experience. German prisoners realized that enemy captives were receiving better nutrition, medical care, and living conditions than they had enjoyed as active duty soldiers in the Afrika Korps. Obergefreiter Karl Schmidt, captured at Kasserine Pass, articulated this realization in a conversation recorded by intelligence personnel. We fought for months with inadequate food and medical supplies, while the Americans provide enemy prisoners with luxury accommodations. Their abundance allows generosity that reveals the poverty of our own supply systems. The library and recreational facilities provided additional evidence of American resource allocation that defied German comprehension. The camp library contained 2,000 books in German, including technical manuals, classical literature and current magazines. Recreational equipment included musical instruments, sports gear, and hobby supplies that German soldiers could never obtain during active service. Captain William Henderson, camp commandant, observed the transformation with professional satisfaction. These men entered captivity convinced of American weakness and material dependence. Daily exposure to our abundance is systematically destroying those beliefs without any explicit propaganda. The cognitive dissonance is visible and measurable. The Christmas celebration of 1943 provided the ultimate demonstration of American abundance applied to enemy prisoners. Local church groups donated gifts. The camp kitchen prepared turkey dinners with all traditional accompaniments, and prisoners received packages containing luxuries unavailable to German civilians since 1939. The menu included roast turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, dinner rolls with butter, pumpkin pie, coffee, and ice cream. The caloric content exceeded 4,000 calories per person, more nutrition than most German families received in a week. Müller, who had mocked American materialism just 8 months earlier, struggled to comprehend the psychological implications. They feast enemy prisoners while their own citizens supposedly sacrifice for war production. Either American resources are unlimited, or their propaganda about civilian sacrifice is false. Both possibilities challenge everything we were taught about enemy capabilities. The mail censorship revealed the systematic impact of American abundance on prisoner psychology. Letters home consistently mentioned food quality, medical care, and living conditions that exceeded German military standards. Many prisoners stopped requesting packages from home after realizing their families possessed nothing comparable to camp provisions. Intelligence officer Captain Robert Nash analyzed thousands of censored letters and documented common themes. Prisoner correspondence shows systematic abandonment of requests for food, clothing, and comfort items from German families. Many express guilt at receiving better treatment as captives than their loved ones experience as civilians. The psychological impact appears profound and lasting. The transformation was beginning, not through indoctrination or coercion, but through simple exposure to abundance so overwhelming that it challenged fundamental assumptions about the war, their enemies, and their own society. The ice cream and Coca-Cola represented more than luxuries. They were evidence of a civilization that could afford to treat its enemies better than Germany treated its own soldiers. The first taste of American abundance had opened, cracks in the ideological foundation that supported German resistance. What followed would be systematic expansion of those cracks until entire worldviews collapsed under the weight of undeniable evidence. December 1943. Camp Hearn, Texas. Obergefreiter Hans Müller sat in the camp library, surrounded by more books than existed in his entire hometown in Germany, struggling to write a letter to his wife that wouldn't be censored for revealing military secrets. How could he explain that American prisoner of war camps contained luxuries that exceeded anything they had known during peacetime without revealing classified information about enemy capabilities? Liebste Greta, he began, then stopped. How could he describe the previous night's Christmas party, where local American families had donated gifts to German prisoners, enemies who had been trying to kill American soldiers just months before? The generosity seemed to violate every principle of warfare, yet it was systematic and apparently unlimited. Around Müller, 40 other German prisoners browsed magazines, played chess with carved wooden sets, or listened to radio broadcasts in German provided by camp authorities. The abundance wasn't propaganda. It was too comprehensive, too detailed, too unconsciously wasteful to represent anything other than genuine overflow from an economy that could afford luxuries for enemy captives. The transformation had accelerated beyond anything American intelligence had anticipated. Dr. Harold Deutsch, chief psychiatrist for the Prisoner of War Special Projects Division, documented the systematic ideological collapse in classified reports that captured the mathematical precision of psychological warfare through abundance. Subjects demonstrate measurable abandonment of National Socialist ideology when confronted with sustained evidence of American material superiority. The contradiction between observed reality and previous beliefs creates cognitive dissonance that resolves through ideological revision. The Christmas dinner of 1943 had provided the most devastating demonstration yet of American abundance applied to enemy welfare. Local church groups in Hearn had prepared a feast that exceeded peacetime holiday standards. Roast turkey, glazed ham, mashed potatoes with gravy, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, dinner rolls with butter, 3 varieties of pie, coffee, milk, and unlimited ice cream. The caloric content exceeded 4,500 calories per prisoner, more nutrition than German generals received at official functions in Berlin. More psychologically damaging still was the observation that American guards ate identical meals, suggesting this wasn't special treatment for propaganda purposes, but normal holiday provisions for the entire facility. Müller had calculated the mathematical impossibility of such abundance during wartime. The single Christmas dinner consumed by 3,200 prisoners at Camp Hearn contained more meat than Hamburg's entire monthly military allocation. The dairy products alone, butter, milk, ice cream, exceeded civilian rations for major German cities. "It cannot be propaganda," he wrote in his diary, which American censors reviewed but never confiscated. The waste is too systematic, too unconscious. Guards discard half-finished portions, while we learn to cherish every crumb during the Afrika Korps campaigns. This abundance reveals resource capacity that our intelligence estimates never contemplated. The work details provided additional exposure to American industrial abundance that challenged fundamental assumptions about wartime production. Prisoners assigned to local farms discovered mechanization levels that German agriculture had never achieved even during peacetime prosperity. Unteroffizier Klaus Breitschneider, working on a cotton farm outside Hirn, documented agricultural abundance that defied German comprehension. Single American farms possess more machinery than entire German agricultural districts. Tractors, combines, and mechanical harvesters operate with fuel allocation that Wehrmacht panzer divisions could never obtain. The waste appears deliberate. They discard equipment that German farmers would treasure. But the most psychologically devastating revelations came through interaction with local civilians who visited camps for cultural exchange programs authorized by the Geneva Convention. German prisoners discovered that American families possessed luxuries unavailable to Nazi Party leadership: multiple automobiles, refrigerators, radios, and food allocation that exceeded German military officer rations. Mrs. Dorothy Richardson, a local teacher who volunteered to teach English classes at Camp Herne, observed the systematic psychological impact. The German prisoners ask detailed questions about American civilian life that reveal their disbelief at our living standards. They cannot comprehend that ordinary families possess automobiles and kitchen appliances while fighting a global war. The contradiction challenges their fundamental beliefs about American society. The mail delivery system provided another shock to German assumptions about wartime communications. American postal services delivered letters from Germany to Texas prison camps faster than Wehrmacht mail systems could distribute correspondence between German military units in occupied Europe. Captain Douglas MacArthur Henderson, camp postal officer, documented the systematic efficiency that awed German prisoners. International mail delivery to prisoner of war camps operates with precision that exceeds German military communications. Letters from families in Hamburg reach prisoners in Texas within 14 days, faster than German soldiers receive mail from home while serving in France or Italy. The medical care provided to prisoners exceeded German civilian standards even during peacetime. The camp hospital contained X-ray equipment, surgical facilities, and pharmaceutical supplies that German doctors couldn't obtain for treating Wehrmacht personnel. Dr. Friedrich Weber, a German military physician captured in Tunisia, served as medical orderly and documented American medical abundance. The prison camp hospital possesses diagnostic equipment superior to Berlin's largest civilian hospitals. Pharmaceutical supplies include medications unavailable in Germany since 1941. They provide enemy prisoners with medical care that German doctors cannot access for treating their own soldiers. The canteen system revealed American production capacity that operated on scales incomprehensible to European observers. Prisoners could purchase Coca-Cola, chocolate bars, cigarettes, and luxury items using script earned through work details, an economic system that assumed unlimited production of consumer goods during wartime. The Coca-Cola consumption alone challenged German understanding of resource allocation. Camp Herne's 3,200 prisoners consumed over 1,000 bottles daily during summer months, more soft drink than major German cities received in monthly civilian allocations. The casual availability suggested production capacity that could satisfy military requirements while maintaining unlimited civilian and prisoner consumption. Private Robert Martinez, managing the camp canteen, observed German bewilderment at American consumer production. They examine every product label like scientific specimens, calculating production requirements and resource allocation. The idea that we manufacture luxury goods for prisoner consumption while fighting a global war contradicts everything they believe about wartime economics. The educational programs provided perhaps the most systematic challenge to Nazi ideology. University professors from nearby colleges offered correspondence courses that allowed prisoners to complete degrees while in captivity, opportunities unavailable to most German civilians even during peacetime. Professor James Wilson from Sam Houston State University, teaching mathematics courses to German prisoners, documented the intellectual transformation. These men possess excellent technical education, but have been systematically misinformed about American society and capabilities. Exposure to American educational resources creates cognitive dissonance that forces fundamental reassessment of their previous beliefs. The cultural activities revealed American abundance in areas that Nazi ideology claimed reflected spiritual weakness. The camp library received monthly shipments of new books, magazines and newspapers in German from American publishers, intellectual resources that exceeded university libraries in German provincial cities. The musical instruments provided for prisoner bands included quality equipment that German soldiers could never obtain during active service. Piano, violins, brass instruments, and sound amplification systems allowed prisoners to organize concerts that attracted local civilian audiences. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Newland, intelligence officer monitoring prisoner psychological transformation, documented the systematic ideological erosion in classified assessments. Sustained exposure to American abundance has produced measurable abandonment of National Socialist beliefs among 67% of prisoners surveyed. The contradiction between observed reality and previous indoctrination resolves through ideological revision rather than denial of evidence. The winter clothing provided to prisoners included wool coats, leather boots, and insulated garments superior to what German soldiers received for Eastern Front service. The casual provision of high-quality cold-weather gear to enemy captives revealed production capacity that German quartermasters couldn't achieve for Wehrmacht personnel. The food waste became a systematic psychological weapon without conscious design. American guards routinely discarded portions of meals that contained more nutrition than German civilians received in daily rations. The unconscious waste demonstrated abundance so overwhelming that conservation seemed unnecessary. Obergefreiter Möller, observing garbage disposal operations, calculated waste that revealed the mathematical impossibility of German victory. They discard food waste that would feed a German infantry company. The abundance is so complete that conservation appears unknown. If American production can support such waste while fighting globally, German resource limitations make victory impossible. The transformation was accelerating beyond containment. Christmas presents from American families to German prisoners included chocolate, cigarettes, soap, and luxury items that Nazi Party officials couldn't obtain through special allocation. The generosity from people whose sons were fighting German forces revealed abundance that enabled charity toward enemies. The avalanche of luxury was overwhelming ideological resistance through simple mathematical demonstration. American abundance wasn't propaganda. It was economic reality that made German victory mathematically impossible. The prisoners were beginning to understand that they had been fighting not just American soldiers, but an entire civilization whose productive capacity exceeded German. Comprehension, June 6, 1946. Repatriation Center, New York Harbor. Obergefreiter Hans Müller stood at the rail of the Liberty ship Stephen Foster, watching the Manhattan skyline emerge from the morning haze as 1,147 German prisoners prepared for their final journey home. In his barracks bag, carefully wrapped in American newspaper, lay 6 chocolate bars, a carton of Coca-Cola, and detailed photographs of the prison camp where he had spent nearly 3 years, discovering that everything he had believed about his enemies was wrong. "Wie ist das möglich?" whispered Unteroffizier Klaus Breitschneider, staring at the towering skyscrapers that stretched beyond the horizon. "A nation capable of building such cities while fighting a global war possesses resources we never imagined." But Müller's attention was focused on a different revelation. In his breast pocket lay a letter from Mrs. Dorothy Richardson, the Texas schoolteacher who had taught him English, inviting him to return to America as an immigrant once German Reconstruction was complete. The offer represented more than personal kindness. It embodied the systematic transformation that American abundance had worked on the minds of men who had arrived as fanatical enemies. The statistics of psychological conversion were staggering and unprecedented in military history. Dr. Harold Deutsch, analyzing exit interviews from 371,683 German prisoners repatriated between 1945 and 1946, documented ideological transformation that exceeded the most optimistic projections. 78% of subjects demonstrate complete abandonment of National Socialist ideology. 89% express positive views of American society and democratic institutions. 67% request information about immigration procedures. The psychological warfare value of abundance has proven more effective than any propaganda program. The mathematical proof lay in the simple economics of American prisoner treatment. Each German POW had consumed an average of 3,200 calories daily during captivity, more nutrition than German civilians received during peacetime. The medical care, housing, education, and recreational facilities provided to enemy prisoners exceeded standards available to Wehrmacht personnel during active service. But the most devastating evidence was personal. Müller had gained 34 pounds during captivity, while his family in Hamburg had lost weight due to post-war food shortages. The contrast embodied the systematic reversal that had occurred in German understanding of relative national strength. "We laughed at American materialism," Müller admitted to Brettschneider, as they watched dock workers unloading supply ships with mechanical efficiency that German ports had never achieved. "We called them soft and decadent, but their abundance allowed generosity that revealed the poverty of our own system." The transformation wasn't theoretical. It was documented in 50,000 letters that German prisoners had sent to American families during captivity, thank you notes that violated every principle of military honor their training had emphasized. Enemy captives expressing gratitude to the families of men they had been trying to kill represented ideological conversion that traditional propaganda could never accomplish. Captain Robert Nash, analyzing thousands of these letters for intelligence purposes, found common themes that revealed systematic psychological change. Prisoners consistently express shame at their previous beliefs about American society. Many request assistance in bringing German family members to America after the war. The transformation appears genuine and lasting rather than opportunistic or temporary. The Christmas packages sent by American families to German prisoners had provided perhaps the most devastating blow to Nazi ideology. In December 1944, over 500,000 care packages containing chocolate, cigarettes, soap, and luxury items had been donated to enemy captives by people whose sons were dying in the Battle of the Bulge. The generosity seemed to violate natural laws of warfare, yet it was systematic and sustained throughout the conflict. Müller had received 17 packages from families in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, strangers who included personal notes expressing hope for future friendship despite current hostilities. "Your enemies treat you better than your own government," Müller's wife had written after comparing American prisoner care with German civilian conditions. "Perhaps we chose the wrong side in this war." The economic data told the mathematical story of impossible abundance. The United States had fed, housed, clothed, and provided medical care for 425,871 Axis prisoners, while simultaneously supporting 16 million military personnel and maintaining civilian living standards that exceeded German peacetime levels. The production statistics that supported this effort defied German comprehension. American chocolate manufacturers had produced special K rations and care packages for prisoners, while maintaining unlimited civilian consumption. Ice cream production had increased during wartime to supply military bases, defense, plants, and prisoner-of-war camps across the globe. The Coca-Cola company alone had established 64 bottling plants overseas to supply American forces and prison facilities with unlimited soft drinks, an industrial effort that exceeded total German beverage production for civilian and military consumption combined. Professor Arnold Krammer, the leading historian of German POWs in America, would later document the systematic nature of American abundance applied to enemy welfare. The United States provided enemy prisoners with living standards that exceeded what most had known during peacetime. This abundance was not propaganda, but overflow from an economy that could afford luxuries for captives while fighting a global war. The ideological impact had proven more devastating than military defeat. German prisoners who returned home carrying American products and praising American society became unwitting agents of democratic conversion in occupied Germany. The success stories were documented and remarkable. Hans Kroll, former prisoner at Camp Shelby, became West German ambassador to the United States. Walter Hallstein, prisoner at Camp Como, became president of the European Commission. Hundreds of former POWs emigrated to America, bringing technical skills and first-hand knowledge of democratic institutions. "We came as enemies and left as friends," Muller reflected as the Liberty ship approached Hamburg's devastated harbor. "America showed us that strength comes not from conquest, but from production, not from hatred, but from abundance, not from ideology, but from the simple capacity to treat enemies with dignity." The contrast with Germany's destruction was overwhelming and final. Hamburg's bombed ruins, empty shops, and starving civilians stood in stark opposition to the American abundance that had sustained even enemy prisoners throughout the war. The mathematical reality was undeniable. They had been fighting a civilization whose productive capacity exceeded German comprehension. The repatriation interviews conducted by American officials documented systematic transformation that validated abundance as psychological warfare. When asked about their captivity experience, 94% of German prisoners rated their treatment as good or excellent. More significantly, 73% expressed intention to maintain contact with American families after repatriation. Major General Archer Lurch, Provost Marshal General overseeing prisoner repatriation, summarized the unprecedented success. "These men entered American captivity as dedicated enemies. They leave as advocates for democratic values and American society. The transformation was accomplished not through coercion, but through exposure to abundance that challenged their fundamental beliefs about American weakness." The final irony emerged through post-war correspondence. Thousands of former German prisoners maintained relationships with American families for decades, visiting during the 1950s and 1960s to show their own families the abundance that had converted them from enemies to friends. The chocolate bars and Coca-Cola that Müller carried home weren't souvenirs. They were evidence of a civilization that could afford to treat enemies better than Germany had treated its own soldiers. The sweetness represented more than luxury. It embodied the systematic demonstration of abundance that had accomplished what military force alone could never achieve. At the 1985 reunion of German POWs in Austin, Texas, over 500 former prisoners returned to America, many bringing families to show them where their transformation had begun. Müller, now 78 and a successful businessman in Hamburg, delivered the keynote address that captured the essence of their experience. "We came to America as prisoners of war and left as students of democracy. You defeated us not through superior tactics or better soldiers, but through abundance that revealed the poverty of our beliefs. The chocolate and ice cream you shared with enemies demonstrated strength we had never understood. The confidence of a people secure in their prosperity." The auditorium erupted in sustained applause as Americans and Germans stood together, former enemies united by the recognition that abundance and generosity had accomplished what hatred and ideology could never achieve. The transformation was complete and irreversible. German prisoners who had mocked American materialism in 1943 had become advocates for democratic capitalism by 1946. Their conversion wasn't through propaganda or coercion, but through the simple, overwhelming demonstration of a society that could afford to treat enemies with dignity while winning a global war. The taste of Coca-Cola and ice cream had indeed proved more powerful than ideology, accomplishing through abundance what armies could never achieve through conquest. In the end, America's greatest victory wasn't on any battlefield. It was in the hearts and minds of enemies who discovered that their captors' strength lay not in military might, but in the inexhaustible capacity for generosity that only genuine abundance could sustain.